So hi, Frank.
Hey, Dustin.
Awesome to see you again after
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
I think our last episode we were in Brussels together.
Yeah.
There was one episode where you were on a ship, I
Yep.
think in Croatia, having a boat party. So I took Flip and Drift and met up with Cody in Barcelona, and we had an awesome conversation about us moving everywhere, to do product and to build product in different countries. So that was an interesting conversation, man.
Yeah. So it was actually in the studio. We rented the studio. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we are in our own studio. It's a
Yeah.
suite in Vienna. We have a studio on tour, like a grand tour tent, but a little bit smaller. It
Ah.
fits a bag. So
So you're Taylor Swifting this then.
yeah.
But we're just gonna do it for like a weekend.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
guys, if you want us in your city, just let us know in the comments, and we might come.
Yep. Probably Frank. Yeah, not me. Cool. All right. So I think for today, I think we've brushed on in the previous episode more about AI, but it was more of an introduction just because we wanted to tell more our listeners and viewers on what AI is and to give them a background so they don't get overwhelmed, right? Because I think at this point, AI is overwhelming, man, right? And for a lot of people and companies, even here in Europe, there's still this digital transformation happening where people are trying to figure out what is AI, how do we plug in AI into our companies, and how do we make that transition easily, right? And there are different ways of doing it, but I think the easiest way to do it is to listen to podcasts such as ours, right? Because it's real experiences of real people doing real things. And sometimes we might talk about product a lot, but I think product is only there as a framework that we can use in order to make decisions, right? But in general, anybody can actually do what we're doing, right? It's just that we've built some muscle already doing it in our careers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, as you mentioned last time, it was about the introduction to AI, but the Brussels, it was March. Was it March or something around this?
Time flies. Yeah.
So it's like almost, was it March? It might be like,
Yeah.
is it almost a year from
Yeah,
our last
it's-
episode or
yep.
our last episode? It was actually shipped at the time we are shooting this in January, February already.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, during that year, we introduced AI, but it moved a lot from this
Mhm.
time. So the vibe coding was actually just getting popular
Yeah.
at this point. It was a lot about AI agents and workflows and NA10 and stuff, but today vibe coding is the real trend. So this can be something we will be focusing on this episode.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think what we'll focus on this episode is not the actual like how to vibe code, but let's talk about the concept of vibe coding in general and how you can also apply it in product, right? And then later on, we can actually show you in a different episode how we can vibe code our own product, and get it out there. But we'd love to share with a lot of people on this podcast different tips on how to use it and how to do it so that you can start your own AI journey.
Yeah, I hope that you find this episode helpful for you because with Dustin, we will always be founders in heart. So for us with the product experience, it's very good tool actually to make our ideas come true.
Mm.
Because right now it's one prompt away. But is it actually like this?
It sounds easy, right?
Yeah.
And then when you start jumping into it,
yeah.
it's not as easy.
Like,
right?
I mean, the start of the project, most of the times you just send one prompt, and those from you who already tried web coding, that first prompt, it's like, what the hell? What did it just do? This would take a month to an engineer. But then you need to tweak a little thing later in the process, and it starts to get harder and harder and more complex, more buggy. And this is also something we want to cover in this episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Before we deep dive into vibe coding, why don't we start talking about what the heck is vibe coding, right? So probably it might be good to get your definition of vibe coding, Frank, and then we can start from there.
So, wipe coding, it's, as it sounds, it's a coding by wipes. So that means that if you wanted to code in the past, you had to learn a programming language, right?
Mhm.
But in past days of AI, when we started getting generative AI, we started getting text by a prompt. Later, we get generative AI make images from a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
And today, we can actually get a code. So full stack app from the LLM model, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the catch. It really feels that an engineer is doing the app. You get the design, you get the front end, you get the back end, you get the database and everything. But there's important thing. It's still only a large language model
Yep.
that's generating everything based on probability. So in terms of like fitting to your specs, to acceptance criteria and everything else, it can look like big progress in the start that it's actually moving. But if you don't really check the guts of the app and what's really happening on the behind, it can be very dangerous for you in terms of breaking in the near future, and of course of some security issues. So it's very important to take note that vibe coding, it's very different still from the real engineer or real people doing the code.
Yeah.
Because it can only get the context the best LLMs can do right now. So
Yeah. And I think we have to also mention, Frank, that, and to oversimplify it for people who still get confused with the concept of like front end, back end, database, and everything. I have to simplify it for those viewers or listeners. So vibe coding in general is just prompt somebody who writes down something simple or a group of instructions, or just telling the system that they want a certain type of website or a certain type of solution. Okay. The system will ingest everything that they think you want and come up with a solution. Okay. So in this case, let's say you tell Lovable, Replit, Base24, or any of these software out there that, hey, I want a website for my baking business to drive people in so they can purchase cake directly from my website. So based on that very simple statement, you might be able to generate, or the tool might be able to generate a website that actually satisfies those requirements. But obviously, same with somebody who doesn't understand context or intent, it might interpret whatever you're saying in their own specific way, right? So whatever you want might not be the result that you get. That's why vibe coding is not as simple as just putting in a journal entry and you get an output. There are certain elements or ways to vibe code in order to get the correct result without having to repeat the process all over again, right? So that's vibe coding. So when you hear vibe coding, Frank, and this is another question related to that, do you see empowerment or chaos?
And I think it's the perception of what really the vibe coding is, because I think that it can really feel like empowerment for people that has no knowledge of what really app is made of.
Yep.
And for me, I'm like in a tunnel vision a little bit, because I think both of us have some experience as an engineers. In our product career, we work with the engineers, so we actually know what's happening on the back end, so in the behind the scenes when you develop an app. So from the perspective of the chat UI, when you just write a sentence and you get an app, it's really amazing, I have to say. I don't know, from the perspective of people who don't know how actual apps are built, what they actually do when they like the app on Lovable or any other. I will keep referencing Lovable because this is what I love to use.
It's European.
Yes, we
love your
right?
own, man. Yeah.
What do you actually do when the app starts to get buggy? Because I run to so many situations when, only because of my previous experience with programming, I was able to solve the bug.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have this experience, I couldn't recognize what's the problem, and I would have to start over. So I'm thinking how people who don't have this experience really work in these situations.
I think a lot of people, man, in these situations, especially those that don't have the technical background, I've met a lot of them and I talked to a lot of them. They have difficulty getting to the end result because they're getting frustrated that they give commands to AI or this tool, but the tool doesn't interpret whatever they need or their intent in the right way. So the output is usually not whatever their input is or their intent is. I think one tip that we can give to those that are starting out with vibe coding, obviously everybody can vibe code and they can build their own. But I think in order to start on a good note, you really have to take care of your first prompt, right? And that's usually where it turns into SHIT or it turns into success, right? So when I vibe code, I make sure first that the first prompt that we give to Lovable, or let's use Lovable because we like using Lovable. The first prompt that we give to Lovable is something that comes actually out of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I do is that I chat with ChatGPT just to use it as my fractional co-founder, right?
Oh,
Wherein
yeah.
you bounce ideas with ChatGPT. You tell them, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what the solution is for the problem that I want to solve, and this is the type of customer I want to have. And once you have that from ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT, hey, dude. Well, I'm just making it very California here, but hey, ChatGPT, give me a Lovable prompt. And usually they can give a very good prompt that you can insert into Lovable, and usually that's a very good start, I think, to an amazing project. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have like first tips, in getting into it? Because that was my, perspective. Yeah.
No, I wanted to say a little disclaimer because actually we know of each other that we use wipe coding like Lovable, but actually for our listeners to know, we didn't have too much time to discuss it. What's our workflow? So during this podcast, we will be exploring how we do the things, and I'm interested in what will be the match for us, for our process, for our workflow, because I definitely agree that the initial prompt is very, very important. And the first prompt is very important. From my perspective, I never want Lovable to build anything on the first prompt. That's the thing, because you can't make a new project without actually putting the first prompt. So usually I'm not really building anything with the first prompt, just preparing the project. And for me, this will be very cliche, but I think I already mentioned it.
I think the topic in itself, man, of talking about AI is very cliched already at this
it's
point.
very cliche, and
Yeah.
we are 100 years behind apes with this episode, because no, really, I think I mentioned this quote from Albert Einstein in the previous episode already, that if you have 1 hour, if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he would spend like 50 or 55 minutes just thinking about the problem, and 5 minutes solving it. And I think we discussed it before in the first episode or second episode, in the perspective of product management, that we shouldn't focus on the solution itself, but on the problem the most of the time, to really understand it. And I think in wipe coding, the same rule applies. I'm just putting on side the problem in terms of solving the customer's problems, but right now, the problem of creating a quality app. So for me, I spent hours and hours just preparing the initial specs before I actually started building. Like 3 or 4 hours for one of the app, I was just focusing on getting the specs right.
And definitely, I think when we go back to our role as product, there's always that debate. I'm going back to topic, but there's that debate of like, hey, do we prepare a PRD? Do we prepare the requirements in advance, or do we start vibe coding and just winging it? So I'd love to hear your opinion, and I have my opinions also, but I'd love to hear your opinion on where does the PRD come in? Because we have two different perspectives. For me, I'm the type of guy that definitely when you need PRD at the beginning or a bigger strategy, you can do it. But for certain projects, for 0 to 1 founders, or for those that you've already prepared at least a high level understanding of what the roadmap looks like, you might not need to have detailed requirements. And you can just do that later on for documentation.
Yeah, so the PRD for me, when there was no wipe coding and I had to write the PRD, of course, there were some smaller initiatives where PRD was one Jira ticket, for example, right? And you just write it once and then never update it. So, but there were bigger initiatives.
It's a good one, actually, a good topic. Yeah,
like completely new features, big features, semi-products that needed big PRD based on some research, for example. But actually, during the development, the problem for me every time was that the PRD started to get outdated. Because during the development, I don't know, do you remember any time you actually fit 100% of your PRD from the start? Because if you do agile, I think that's not possible and not wanted.
Yeah.
Like,
You know, the funny thing is, I created PRDs, but a lot of the PRDs I created were actually not, all of them were not executed,
Yeah.
you know, up to the spec.
yeah.
It might be because of the companies I was working with where they didn't need very specific requirements or the requirements kept on changing. So at the end of the day, the PRD didn't really become the Bible of a lot of engineering companies.
Yeah.
And to be fair and to be honest, do a lot of like more junior engineers read PRDs? Sorry, don't kill me. But I think a lot of people, I think, really lack the attention span. That's why you see also some people that, you know, just look at Jira tickets and they'd rather do input and output, right? There's a new definition of what a PRD should be in the world of vibe coding.
And maybe let's come back and just explain what the PRD is.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, what is
Yeah.
PRD? Product Requirements Document is the how do I call it? Like
It's the Bible
Yeah.
of product people and the main document that we write that lists down all of the requirements that we have. And it's our document that we hand over to engineers so that they can see what the overall project looks like. Right.
Like, do you see there difference between Product Requirements Document (PRD) or product specs,
Yeah.
or is it the synonym for you?
It's the same for me,
Yeah,
you know,
for me
but
too.
I think what differentiates this one from what the engineers produce is that for us, this is a group of like business requirements that we translate into something more nerdy or technical.
So, do you in the PRD do you already define some user flows or some UX design or like specific solutions already or some first architectural decisions, or is PRD for you more of a this is the product, this is overall high vision of how it should work, there are some modules in the product?
So I think each product person deals with it differently,
Yeah.
depending also the type of product that they're handling. But mainly we don't deal with how, you know, and it's all about the what, the why, the who. So it really gives that, you know, almost 360 perspective on what you're trying to build. Because the how, you can give hints on the what, using a what, you know, but you can't tell an engineer that, hey, you know, this is how you should build it. This is what stack you should use, you know, because definitely you want to rely on your engineers in order to give their recommendation on what they think is best.
I completely agree that it sometimes sounds that product world and product managers have their frameworks and their library of frameworks and that everything is fitting one size. And it's actually not. Like PRD for any product manager
Yeah.
is a little bit different document, let's say. But I think your definition is really good. Like product requirements document, for me, it's just a way to describe what the product is,
Yeah.
what the app is. And I think this is actually a nice topic just to, what's the difference between the app and the product? And I think this is really interesting topic because I feel, from my perspective of how I would define these two terms, that wipe coding is primarily, or today's wipe coding tools and how people use them, it's for building apps, but not really building products. Because building in a product, it's not only about coding, but product is so many more things, right?
Yeah,
So
it's the overall solution, I think,
Yeah.
you know. And I think people have that misnomer of using app versus product, but actually product is really the overall arching,
yeah,
you know, what you're trying to build. It's the overall solution. The app is only one piece to it, but you also have to think about the other components that you have to build to give the overall experience. So example, people think that, oh, I'm just going to build an app. I'm like, so what do you mean by that? You know,
yeah.
like you always have to ask them, hey, is this a website? Is this a mobile app? Is this a native app that you want to use on a phone? Is it like, is there a back office component where you can, it's like you have the God mode for Uber where you can actually tweak certain things and it changes, let's say, the rate of, you know, rides from one place to the other, you know, because you were able to modify it in the back office. Is there also, let's say, a component where you build a back office solution as a dashboard for the clients that you work with to show them the value of the service that you're giving to them. So there's a lot of components, and that I think is product, right? It's overall thinking about the solution and the different components to it, and the app is only one piece of it. That's why I
Yeah.
think that's also like something that people don't realize is that when you do vibe coding, you have to think about all of these different dimensions. And that's why the PRD is still good because it helps you think about the end to end. But at the same time, I don't think you have to spend so much time now, man, in this new world that we have thinking about a complete PRD. I don't want to coin this term, but I was thinking, what if you have a skeleton PRD, right? You don't spend so much time creating the PRD, but you get it to a point wherein you can justify really well all of the W's, the who, the what, the why, the where, the when, and all of these, where and when, I don't even know if there's a where and when, but all of the W's to make sure that you know what you're actually building. And when you have doubts on what you're building and if things get to SHIT, why am I not censoring this one? I don't even share this with like younger kids on YouTube. But when things turn to shit, then you can always go back to the solution and then find another way around it. Yeah.
For me, the definition of product is. By the way, this is.
Oh yeah, we haven't introduced the bread.
This is besides the startups and stuff, I like to bake a sourdough. So this is my gift to Dustin, actually. So
by the way, this is edible, and we're gonna eat it later on.
Yeah,
it's just funny that we're putting it on this couch.
We just need to wash it. Yeah.
Wash the bread.
For me, this is the loaf of a bread. It's not a product, but if I put it into the supermarket and put a price on it, and run a marketing for people to come to the supermarket and buy it, then it becomes the product, right?
Yeah.
So this is my definition of difference between the app and the product, that the product is actually app that sells. And this is something that is not covered at all by current Lovable or vibe coding tools.
Yeah, actually that's true.
So I think this is because you spend a lot of credits in those vibe coding tools. Lovable is the most expensive one of them, right? But if you don't build an app to solve your own problem, I believe that a lot of founders and people who want to build apps on the Lovable actually wants to build products, so apps that are selling. So if you build just an app to solve your own problems, just to help you with something, it's okay. But if you want to build a product, something that you will earn money for, I think that's a little bit underserved right now with the current vibe coding tools to help their users, the customers, to actually achieve this.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good... it's funny how we're complementing each other with keep on layering all of these conversations, because I think we're getting to the point here is that vibe coding tools nowadays can solve the problem of getting to the first prototype, getting something out there, but it requires also strategic thought and planning for the overall solution, how you're going to sell it, and that's still the missing piece that a lot of vibe coding tools don't have yet, right? Because it's so easy to come up with a website or a landing page, but have you also thought through analytics? How are you going to measure success when it comes to whatever you build, right? Like, did you even build analytics as part of, this project that you have? That's why the PRD brings you back to that, right? Like, what are you measuring? What is success?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. When you touch this, I love how you can easily integrate user behavior analytics in Lovable projects. Like, this is very nice when you really want to it understands the context of the user flow from the code and from designs and everything. So you can just tell it instrument it with Mixpanel, or just create an event logging. And it really works nice for me.
And you don't even need an integration, man.
Yeah, and
you can build it natively in your own app.
You can build natively. Exactly. So this is very nice. I love this during vibe coding, that I don't have to create specs with all those parameters and everything for the developers and think about it. No, just instrument every button, every interaction, and use parameters that are making sense.
Yeah.
And you have something in 1 prompt, 2 prompts, 10 prompts ready, and you can just measure from the start. So this is very good.
I have another tip. So I think once you've prepared already the problem that you want to solve, and you have the hypothesis on how you think some of the features will move the needle, you have to bake that in as part of the back office or whatever you build. So example, with one of the startups that I work with, we haven't launched yet, so I can't talk about it in public. But what we did is that we're going to run a pilot with a brand, and as part of this pilot that I'm vibe coding for, we have certain hypotheses on how we think certain features or certain things that we build will move the needle, and validating, what we want to prove with this project. And as part of the dashboard, we literally have the hypothesis coded as part of our metrics dashboard or analytics dashboard. So you can see hypothesis 1, how it's performing, hypothesis 2, how it's performing.
Yeah.
Before with product, you had to skip all of those because you didn't have time to build them.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're just gonna like export the back-end data, and then figure that out. But with the vibe coding world, it doesn't only give you the landing page or the project itself, but if you plan this really well and you're smarter with how you plan your product, then you'll be able to also validate this and get to product market fit faster.
Yes. Yeah. I
Crazy.
completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in these terms, it's amazing. Like large language models are good for analyzing, actually. And this is also one topic that we want to talk about, the difference between executing and analyzing, because I have one use case that happens to me like a lot, that Lovable is stuck in some back loop. And it has all the context, right? It has the session where we develop the feature. It has the database. It has all the code base. It has also the documentation I create. Maybe we get back to how we both do the documentation for the app later. But it can't solve the issue for some reason, right? And it's using Claude. It's using ChatGPT, right? But why? So what I sometimes do, I tell Lovable, document this feature, the components, the logic, and the documentation we have for it from the PRD, and give it to me as a document. I upload it to ChatGPT and let ChatGPT analyze. ChatGPT with very, very small context compared to what else Lovable has, and ChatGPT is able to solve it. And this is mind-blowing for me, how the same model that has more context here can solve the problem if it has everything. But ChatGPT, brand new chat that has no context with just one file, can solve the problem and propose a better architectural decisions to remove these bugs.
But to make this more real, though, doesn't it feel like real life? It's so weird that we're talking about AI trying to be real life, because it's as if you were talking to different people to get different perspectives on a solution, right? And that's just what the world of AI is, and agents and LLMs, is that you're just talking to different individuals that have a different memory set of what they have and what they know. And then that's how they're able to give you a different solution to a problem, because they weren't exposed to your the problems that you've dealt with before, or they have a different memory in mind, So I feel like that's the best part about AI nowadays, and how we build and vibe code and use all of the tools. So I feel a lot of people shouldn't just be stuck with like thinking that AI is only ChatGPT. But AI is AI being implemented, even if they also have the same underlying technology. Let's say OpenAI empowers different tools. They're still trained with different data sets or different models, right? So the solution might be different from one software to another. So it's good to experiment.
I completely agree. When you're speaking about this, that it's like real life when you talk to different people and they have different opinions. I was actually thinking about the same thing, and I was doing some research on how it actually works, the vibe coding, because of course it's not just one chat that is always loading the whole context, the whole code base. No, it has some vector databases, and it has some built-in roles. So executing role is when in Lovable you write directly into the text field, into the chat field, and hit that arrow to build a thing. And then you have the plan mode, right? That is analyzing.
But that's very new, the plan mode.
It was called chat mode. Like it's there for a few months, but they just renamed it to plan.
No, I think the technology, if I'm not mistaken, also improved around planning. So instead of just like instead of like question and answer, like feedback, it actually does the planning for you and thinks for itself as if they are a separate piece of your personality.
I love to go through the logs of the thinking process, because it's nice that you can see the thinking model and what's happening here. And sometimes you see things like, okay, I see the issue. Okay, I can do it this way. Wait, this is not the issue. There is something else. And you can see that it's actually thinking and kind of challenging its own thoughts and ideas, and somehow addressing them and evaluating them if the proposed solution is really the right solution. But still, how is it possible that a brand new chat can solve really complex problem I have in Lovable, and Lovable couldn't do it when it's the same language model. I don't actually know, but what ChatGPT told me it might be about is that the Lovable can actually be stuck in this big context, because of course it's an app that tries to do everything as efficient as possible, have some vector databases to really just look on those parts of the code and the documentation and the database that it needs and find all those relatives and relations to find the context it needs, because it can't just load all those thousands of lines of codes, right? But sometimes more and more you are in a bug loop, the more and more it's
it gets confused. I think it's also and just to also kind of like go back to that point that you're mentioning, I think it's also like it's stuck in that own loop that it's zoomed into a certain problem and it doesn't zoom out anymore. You know, because I think humans are still better, by the way, guys. We're not saying that AI will rule the world now, but we're just saying that I think for I don't know, just our experience with Lovable, it's that, or some of these tools, is that they zoom in too often and then they circle around solving the problem within a smaller circle. But if you introduce it to another AI tool that doesn't have that zoomed in context and they zoom out, then they might have a bigger solution thinking about the other pieces you might have with your code.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's good to always consult with different AI tools, so that you have like a 360, you know, like, it's like a doctor with like second opinions, right?
Yeah.
You have to ask different doctors to make sure that you can make the right judgment on how to build something.
Yep.
Yeah. I think definitely we've vibe coded already. You learn from the tips that we've talked about. You have a nice product out there that considered not only an app or a solution, but the overall product. I think we're missing something, man.
Yeah. And it's actually selling and growing the product, the user base.
If you build something and you're the only one who uses it, I find there's value. But a lot of people who vibe code, they want to sell something, right? They want to sell the platform. They want to let other people see the value of what they're offering, you know? So I think that's a missing piece that a lot of vibe coding tools don't have, is really getting you to understand what is product market fit. You know, where do you find that? How do you do it? You know, what are the different ways of doing it? You know, and I think as part of the strategy, I think it's too long to discuss go-to-market and how to do it. But I think the tip here is that have a strategy in mind, you know, even before you finish your product, just to make sure that once you know already your customers, once you know already the value of your product, once you know already that you have a hypothesis or a problem that you want to solve, now it's a time to like, okay, how do you market it to other people? So one question, I don't want to put you on the spot here for growth, because definitely I'd love to hear another opinion, but how do you approach growth, you know, and what is growth and what is go-to-market, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, it's go-to-market first before growth. But But yeah.
Well, actually, go-to-market and product-led growth, this is what I mean when we say growth. I don't mean it by like a business growth, like the growth of the whole company, but the growth for me is the synonym for product-led growth. So how the product itself can acquire more users, retain the users that are already in the product, and make more monetary value by better monetization strategies. So this for me means growth. And I think the growth topic is the most important what we are discussing in today's episode, because, okay, Lovable is buggy, but this is something that's probably going to be fixed first, because this is the biggest friction for now for the users using Lovable. And I would say they are most angry about this, because you know it, you spend hundreds of credits and then you are stuck in a bug loop. And sometimes even I feel I can solve it. And sometimes even me, I have to remix the project and start over. We can get back to that later.
That's extreme, yeah.
Yeah, but this is something that Lovable is actually recommending to you. If you are stuck, just remix and do everything from the start, because you learned along the way. But that's actually a really good strategy, and this is how I sometimes want to like to approach my projects in the Lovable. So, but back to the growth, But I want to go back to the PRD, because for me, PRD is no more a specs for the engineers on how to build a product. For me, this document, and whatever you call it, PRD, whatever, for me, it's the thinking model about this. And what I like to do before I start building is actually to have a growth model in mind before I start to build a product. So before I start to build, I have to validate for myself that this product can actually grow organically if it drives value. So for me, it's actually thinking about all these growth loops, like for the acquisition loops, retention loops, or monetary strategies, about the pricing itself, how it could be priced. And I think it really it goes hand by hand because when you develop the features, and this is something probably the most vibe coders are focusing on, is to solve a use case, a use case how the user might use the app, right? What you want to focus on when you have some product experience, and you know it's not about really solving the use case in the first place, but solving the overall problem of the users. So you try to solve the problem and all the underlying use cases the best way. But this is not a guarantee that you will earn money on the product, right? And that the user base will be growing just like.
So I think, Frank, you're going back to
autopilot.
Yeah, but I think it's a great point that I think, and for me, it was always about the end, but somebody always has to remind me that everything has to be at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Meaning the growth strategy shouldn't just come after you've vibe coded that shiz over just to build this app or this product, right? The growth strategy or whatever you're thinking about and acquiring users should be at the beginning, right? So you should talk to people first if there's even a potential buyer for the solution that you have in mind, or even the problem and how you're planning to solve it. And there are different ways of doing that, right? You can do user research, you can also do surveys, you can also do like early validation with just a set of images or a set of ideas, that you can share with the public. I've seen other people actually recruit people off of Craigslist in the US or even Upwork for a $15 30-minute interview, just to get feedback if whatever idea they have is worth it. And I think that's where you should start your strategies from the beginning before you even build. And it's no different from non-vibe coding world, right? Wherein obviously before you spend that certain amount of money to build, you need to get validation first that people are willing to support that idea. Because if you do that at the end, it's like a lost cause. What if nobody wants to buy your product?
Yeah.
Right? And founders, product people who love to build, always forget that vibe coding just makes things easier, but it doesn't mean that, it makes the game different.
Yeah. I think it actually makes the game much, much harder right now.
Yeah.
Because right now, everyone can build an app. And I'm really, really curious where it will take us. Because right now, the big trend is that you build an app on Lovable or using vibe coding, and you know how it is. Most of the time, these apps are unstable. And they are fast produced, right? So the trend today is that you make an app like this, and then you run a lifetime deals on AppSumo, and you sell it for a lifetime deal to the users. And there's hundreds and hundreds of apps built every day like this and selling, because there are no costs to build these first prototypes that can be useful. But since everyone is building it, and I think many of those people are not actually able at the moment to really continue with the development in the future. I'm thinking that there will be a moment where the market will be flooded with absolutely wrong solutions, absolutely wrong apps.
We were seeing that already with the world of apps, right?
Yeah.
You go to the app store and you just have the sameness of everything.
Yeah.
And people are just overwhelmed with trying out different solutions. You see that also with different companies, right? Where they're overwhelmed already with salespeople trying to push something new on their face that is solving a sliver of that problem, and nobody's able to stick with one. Man, it's the law of distraction.
Yeah.
Where people are not able to stick with one tool, they keep on shifting another tool. And once another one, comes out that's much better, then the other tool gets killed. And the lifespan is shorter now because people can build apps faster. I think where it's going, and probably we should shift to this last topic, to end our conversation for today. I think a lot of our viewers learned so much about vibe coding. You can do it yourself, the strategies in order for you to start and to think of so that you're on the right path. But let's look at the flip side. What is the future for vibe coding? Well, one, I'm worried that it might be the app world, right? Where there's so much already out there, not even apps, also products out there that half finished, or they only tackle a sliver of the problem, but they're not able to build it fully. I feel there will be a lot of trash out there, right? Like it's like trash in space. They're just floating around, and then they just keep on accumulating, and people will lose even more less. They'll lose more focus just because there's so much distraction out there. But I think one trend that I'm seeing, and probably can go to the tools and the updates and how cool things will be later on when it comes to technology. But I think people will be building more internal tools for themselves and not outsourcing it to others, and I'm kind of seeing that with product people such as ourselves, that instead of like paying for a Postmark or like a MailChimp to create an email journey, I built it internally in just a coffee shop, a weekend at a coffee shop in New York. Like that's how easy it is now as compared to before. You're like, how will I integrate this? Or like, how do I set this up, so that this, so that this is part of the stack for the product that I'm trying to build, right? So it's crazy how easy it is now. So I think a lot of internal tools will be built with this new world of vibe coding.
Yep. Yeah, definitely for internal tools, it's good.
Okay, cool. So I think definitely one thing that we want to give our viewers or listeners is some tips also on what do we mean by growth and what strategies we can teach them, so that they don't get into this world of like, what do they talk about when they talk about growth? Like, because I think growth is growth or user acquisition, I think is, or go to market is a little bit more complicated because it's in the realm now of marketing, and trying to find ways of getting customers in. People think that marketing is only like, like let's pay ads or let's do organic stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also product-led growth, right? It's building features within the app or within the product that you have in order for people to come in and actually use your product and see value in it. So Frank, I think it might be good for you to share some experience with product-led growth strategies and how our listeners or viewers can see it, because I think this is where they need help the most. They can build their own product, right? If they have the right prompt, they might be lucky. But let's talk about actual strategies.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are watching us that are building for their first time, maybe. So right now, I don't want to speak from a position of authority or something like this, but I spent building apps like last 10 years. And I have to say that right now I value my time a lot, because I have to tell you, when I'm web coding, it's like playing games. I feel like I'm like playing games. When I was playing games when I was younger, and I like Dota 2 and stuff. And for me, it's very similar vibes, like this variable reward. If it goes well, if it doesn't well, what it builds, like it's extremely addictive.
Yeah.
And to some point, I'm worried about the users of web coding tools, because it takes so much money, and so less time. It's like these machines in the casino, right?
Slot machines.
Yeah, slot machines. And there is this motivation that you can someday you will be able to sell it for money. So for me, it's vibes like this. And I believe that there is a lot of excited people. I know of a lot of excited people, but I think you need to put your emotions on the side when you are deciding what to build.
Okay.
And I think you should put away this shiny idea and stop just pursuing the solution, because the solution is so fast today that you don't focus on the problem. And I think the part of the problem is not only solving the user's problem, but the business problem. And the business problem, you don't see it now in the beginning because you have a nice app. But after you build it, spend money on it, spend time on it, and give it to the users, some users will buy it from the paid acquisition, but you want the app, the product, to have traction, to make more and more users on like a compound interest, not like linear, but you need to make more and more to make loops, not funnels. One time acquired, use it for some time, churned, and again.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important in the beginning to think about how the growth will be pursued in this product, because what I discovered is that you can actually make good growth model on every product on earth.
Yeah.
Not every product idea can actually have good growth models. So for me, the criteria is, for example, that I'm really solving.
Let's give a use case, because I think like when we talk about these technical terms, people will be like, "Oh God, they have their Silicon Valley jargon again, and nobody outside of product understands it." So why don't we simplify by talking about real life use cases on problems you've tried solving
Okay.
related to growth.
Okay. I hope. Okay. So I will take an example. This
Take note, we're gonna eat that, man.
this
we
wouldn't
keep
be
on.
this is not edible anymore. Yeah, but it's decorative sourdough. I think we should keep it. This is a loaf of bread, and I'm a ADHD person. So when I start to have a hobby, I completely go to the rabbit hole. And most of the times when I love a hobby, I try to ideate ideas, how to monetize it, how to make products, how to make my own journey better. So in my example, I am trying to make a bread baking app. And there are bread baking app already. So I was thinking about this idea. Is it a good idea? What about the market? So first time I just checked the market, how big it is in my local market, in the world. This is the first validation, but we are not talking about the validation right now. So in some way, you just validate that there are some users that can buy it. There is a demand, right? And there are some solutions, and you just evaluate those solutions if it's good or not. If you can just spot a better alternative in your product, if you can see right away that you can do the thing better, I think it's good. It's a good validation point. If you are honest to yourself, actually, right? Yeah. And that comes with experience. But for me, after that, it's extremely important to draft my growth model before I start to develop the thing. So, like, there are 3 parts, like acquisition, retention, and monetization, from which you want to focus on retention the most when the product is a little bit mature. Of course, it doesn't make sense to focus on retention when you didn't acquire a single user, right? But I think if you don't think about the retention before you start building and start the acquisition, you can end up with spending so much money on the acquisition itself, and you will end up like closing your business because the retention wouldn't work. So for me, it's questions like, how can I make my users to come to my product repeatedly at first time? So am I actually solving a problem or use case they experience on continue basis? And often, for me, often means once a week, for example.
Do you have an example perhaps of an app or a service or something, that we can just give to our audience so that it's more tangible for them?
Yeah, of course, because there's the thing that if you are starting to deal with the growth, it might be very complicated. But the first thing you have to know is that what is the natural period of your users dealing with the use case you are solving for them. So for example, if you are making app that helps you sell a home,
okay,
the natural period of this use case is 1 to 3 to 5 years. So your users will come when they buy a home, then live in it for 5 to 10 years, and then maybe use your service again. And this is actually not a viable business if you don't make some other products that will keep the users coming more often. Facebook, this is...
Yeah, so let's stick with the housing, app.
Let's stick with the
housing. That's why you have Zillow, right?
Yeah, Zillow, right?
Zillow or Redfin. Definitely one of the biggest features they have is allowing you to connect with your agent, right? So that you can have the transaction of being able to eventually buy your first home. Right? But before you do that, the way to acquire them is having a free platform without having to register or log in, where they display the MLS, or the data coming from available houses that people are selling, right? And have that display on the web, add so much more data and detail so that they just keep on browsing, and that's a way for them to always come back to your brand, even if the goal is not to purchase a home, right? Because they also have back-end tools that they offer real estate agents to actually get into that transaction and buy that home for the customer using all of these agent tools, right? So I think an acquisition strategy for them is being able to hook them in, because you see all of this data, and this data is also an SEO play, right? Because so much pages get spun up of houses in West Seattle, houses in blah, 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 and that's also a strategy that we had before in a home service, home service company that I was working with before, is that based on reviews coming from customers on jobs done, we were able to spin up a lot of pages, right? That's why that was an acquisition play. And I think the retention play there for Zillow or Redfin is being able to let them create an account, right? And then push them notifications. That, hey, there's an update. There's a new home within the price range that you want, right? So that's also in a retention model, right? Until the final transaction is being able to I'm ready to purchase one, and you connect with an agent that's part of their network, right? So that in itself is a good sample of how a full loop looks like, right?
Yep. And this is very important to just be honest about the natural use case frequency. Frequency is the word I wanted to use, not the period, right? So because if you are making a product for the users, you have to respect, most of the times you have to respect the nature of frequency, because if you make Zillow, you can't buy the product, you can't just make your users buy and sell product homes every day, right?
Yeah.
So the frequency will just be the same. So for example, if there are really 0 to 1 products like Facebook, right?
Yeah.
There was no frequency. There were some proxy products for, I don't know, what was this, Space, MySpace or some different products. But
Friendster.
but people were not all these days every day, 35 times a day on social networks, right?
Yeah.
So Facebook is actually changing the natural frequency of people using the product, of solving their problem by making it more addictive, right?
Yeah.
So, but it is extremely hard to change the nature of frequency. So when I make this bread making app, I don't think I can make my key users bake 10 times more bread per month only because the app is good. No, I just need to be honest with myself that they bake bread. My ICP is they bake bread once a week. And this is the nature of frequency. And I have to come up with ideas and use cases how I can bring them at least once a week into my app, maybe more times. So in this example, if I was only making the app about how to break bad, how to
Breaking Bad.
Goddamn bloopers.
Hey, we can have a business out of breaking bread. I'm sure there's already a business that's called Breaking Bread. I'm not going to be surprised if it's in the Philippines. So for the Filipinos out there,
Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Okay, this is nice one.
You're so punny.
I will probably call my app like this, Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and you're
Breaking Bread. Okay, so
you're Heisenbread.
Heisenbread. Heisenbread.
Okay, stop it.
Let's get back to the
this will
point.
be a dad joke podcast. Okay, no. Okay. Sorry to the dads out there. Yeah.
No, really. Let's get back.
Let's tie it back to live coding.
Let's get back to the topic.
Yeah. Okay. For the bread.
If I want to make an app that will help the users bake bread the better way, how can I get them to the app more often than once a week?
Okay.
So you can just think about the use cases that are before actually baking the bread. If you make sourdough, you know that you have to feed your starter the flour and water that just starts to ferment, and you use it in the bread to make it pop. You have to feed it every day.
Yeah.
So this is one opportunity for me, how I can make better engagement, how to take them more often to the app. So there will be sourdough feeding feature.
So let me nail down the idea. So I really feel that what you're saying then, man, is being able to look at the customer journey even before they get to the problem that you're trying to solve. After also, definitely, but it's easier to think about it before you get there. And then that's where you create your growth loops, right? Or your acquisition loop. Just because people might think oh man, how do I think about product-led growth? How do I think about, having a repeatable solution that people can always come back? And it's always about going back to your customer journey, and before they get to your app, what are the problems that they encounter? And that's how I think you'll be able to find your solution, right? And that's an important, a key thing. And that's why we focus a lot of time on this one, is because it's an important thing to nail down, is that people just think about the solution and the outcome, but they always forget how people get there. Right?
How people get there, that's the acquisition, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is the go-to-market strategy, actually, where it fits in. The go-to-market strategy is about the acquisition, about acquiring the first users. Like the go-to-market strategy, we are talking about go-to-market strategy most of the time at the beginning of a product, and most of the time at the beginning of the startup and company. but it's about acquiring first users, and that can be like telling your friends, sales driven acquisition. But in terms of growth, I think the most important question is how I will make my customers to come back often to my product, right? So in this example, I can just tell them, you have your starter, make your starter, there will be your avatar of your starter, and you can log every feeding time, every feeding. So you have all these data about your starter, and you will know that you have the starter in best condition, like the sourdough starter, when you will start baking bread. So I solved the problem, how I will make them come to the app twice a day, because normally you feed your starter twice a day. So they will allow notifications, because this will solve a big problem of theirs and mine also. I forget about my starter most of the times, and he's hungry and not working and baking the bread, right? So I will be happy just to share my notification permission with the app. So it notifies me, your starter hasn't eaten today, right? So I solve the problem of the users I already have to come back more often. But there's another problem, how you can make those users bring you more users. And very simple example, taking the same example, what about if you share your sourdough starter with your partner, with your co-living mate? So if you forget to feed it, they get the notification and feed it for you. Because this is my use case many times, that I'm away from home and I have to tell my girlfriend, can you feed it? And this is how you can bring second user. And I can give you one last example on how you can actually refer. This is called referral, right? When the users keep taking more users into the app. You know it all from Revolut, right? When the Revolut is saying, we will give you $20 if you bring us a new user. Like paid referral, it can work, but not everywhere. So we are working on another app, on another product that's for the skippers on the boats. And the skipper on the boat can create a boat trip, right? And you know what's the best way, how to acquire more users? Like, because the business I'm working with is they're selling the like skipper courses to make skippers better skippers, but also the sail trips for the end users. So very nice referral loop. The skipper will book a boat. That's the monetary point for the company. They will book a boat. And then they have a trip, so they can plan an itinerary. So we help them to plan the itinerary. And what might be better than sharing this itinerary with his crew? And every skipper on every trip has like 10 people crew. So he will send them like an invite to the app, join my trip, like when you book on Airbnb the stay and you say it will be 3 people, it will give you a link to send to those people the accommodation, so they see all those informations. So the same model. So the skipper will just invite 10 people of his crew. They will just make an account on the app. So from one user you get 10, and from which you can make another paying users in the long term, sell them like another like skipper course or something like this if they are excited about sailing. So this is how you should also think about the product before, or how I do it before I start to build it. How can I bring the users more often? So retention, engagement, and how I can let my users to bring more users, so referral. So these are the most important questions in terms of growth. If I simplify it, there's more of them.
I hope we didn't
scare. You can find the link below.
I hope we didn't scare people, man, from vibe coding, because there's actually more thought and planning than just literally being at a coffee shop and thinking about the solution. Because I think a lot of founders and a lot of builders nowadays think that you only have this idea in mind and you want to build it. But even before vibe coding even happened, this is the type of work that we do, is that we always make sure that everybody understands that it's not easy to build a product. Right?
App, maybe.
Probably an app, but
product.
But you're probably wasting your time if you don't have a bigger strategy. Right? That's why it might be good to make sure that you can follow all of the steps that we've talked about during this episode. Right? And then, make sure that you don't forget. We actually talked about the most important thing at the end instead of the beginning. And that was really on purpose, because I think a lot of people know the beginning of this conversation, which is how to prompt, how to put it in, how to figure things out if bugs happen, But people don't spend enough time really thinking through how they're going to sell the app, how they're going to make it grow, how they're going to get other people to come in, how they're going to get validation.
But how do you think about it, Dust? What's growth for you? How much do you focus on it before you start to build, and when you focus more on it during the building process, and how?
You know what's sad about it is that because I also go with the rhythm of how excited the founders are, and a lot of founders that I work with, they always start with, hey, I have this thing that I want to build. But it's never a, hey, this is how I want to get the product market fit. This is how I understand, there's value in the market for this product. That's not how the conversations start. That's why I always have to remind them as part of my conversation and my work with them that, hey, we always have to pay attention to acquisition. How are we going to acquire users, right? But you can never say no at the beginning and tell them, hey, have you thought about this? Because that also, I think, kills innovation. So you have to put that at the back of your head that, hey, you have to remind them that before we even get so mature with the idea, we have to start thinking about how we acquire users before we get so deep into it, But me, myself, I also forget it, man. I also forget a lot of these growth ways of growing the app or bringing customers in, because it's just not sexy, right?
Yeah.
Like growth is not sexy. Like I think like that part of the work is not as exciting as building something and seeing something come to life.
What do you think is the future of vibe coding?
I think the future of vibe coding is that it might produce more apps like the App Store or more products, more than what we need, because people are trying to carve out a niche that some of the apps are not or services are not good at. So it'll be like the App Store. There'll be so much to choose from and it'll be overwhelming. And people will have the shortest, I think, of attention span when it comes to like using certain tools. So a lot of tools might, like a lot of companies also, we used Adobe before, right? And then we didn't use Adobe, and then we shifted to Figma, and then we shifted to Canva. We have all of these tools. And then a lot of founders complain, my God, I spent so much money on subscription already. And I think vibe coding will just make that worse because everybody now is a builder, right? And the more money you have, the more it's easy to pump it in into paid ads and organic. And then from there, see how other people pick it up and you create a new trend. I think the future will be, instead of getting subscription to new apps, people will build more internal apps themselves, and the more internal apps that they have, the easier it is for them to just hold on to like that end-to-end process flow. So instead of having an app that you can only use 1 out of 5 features because that's the only one you need, with vibe coding, the cost has been trimmed so significantly. And at the same time, you can even control and change it as you want and as the business changes, right? So I think that's the future of vibe coding. The tools will definitely become better. Like Lovable has been fantastic and phenomenal, ever since I started it. Haven't been a big user of Replit, Base 44, and the other tools out there. I've always used a combi of like ChatGPT and Lovable, and it's been fantastic for me. But I think people. I think I love the last point that you gave in our previous topic is go to market, right? Like there needs to be a tool that gets built out there where go to market becomes a key part of this process. Because when I work with startups now, the missing piece that I have, and I haven't found a good fit, the missing piece that I found is getting a go to market person that can help get the product that we've built, put it out there, get validation and get customers and get retention and get all of these like, ARM, the one that you mentioned, right? Acquisition, retention, and monetization ready, to make sure that whatever they've built can be brought to success, right? And I think that's where the future is, right? Is to find a tool, a Lovable for GTM.
Yeah.
I haven't found a good one. It's always creatives, right? Like marketing creatives, right? You see those AI creatives, but I think it's one step there, right? Because go to market and getting this out there is I think a multi-step process.
I just remembered what we were discussing in the last episode because it's sometimes already, but we were talking about that the future of SaaS.
Oh, what did we say? I forgot actually what we said.
Yeah, it was the Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, right? He said that the future of SaaS is not the UI, not the CRUD operations operated by clicking buttons, right? But the agents. It was the agent trend. It's not, I think it's still very sexy, but I'm not sure if I'm just in the bubble. But vibe coding is everywhere, and agents still ongoing. But if this is true, and I think it is true, because in my vision, how it would work, if I can solve my problem just by having a thought or just to say it, I would rather solve this problem this way than learning how to click an UI, how to click an app. So, in these terms, I think the apps built on Lovable in terms of UI and SaaS are not really the future, like really, really long term if you are talking 10, 20, 30 years,
we're not gonna
right?
get there, yeah.
Actually, when I'm thinking about it right now is these apps produced on Lovable are probably the shittiest apps we've seen, right? Because if we compare them to those apps, like the biggest Fortune 500 tools, that have like 1,000 engineers working on them, I don't think these apps will ever be better, because from my perspective, these apps now work because they can be fastly developed for niche markets. Like you can tweak every app just to serve one small niche market. And for those users, it can be better actually.
Yeah. But I don't think, let's not discount the app. I have a different perspective. I don't think we should discount the vibe coded apps now, because I think a lot of people have evaluated the code for these apps and they're getting better, man. You know, they're even cleaner than some other developers who really have a bad way of coding and doing architecture, right? Obviously, it's not for scale. It's not for enterprise, you know.
That's what I mean. Like
you don't have the certifications ready or the necessary compliance in order to compete with like a Salesforce or whatever, man.
Yeah.
But Salesforce used to be that small, right? And all of these companies that are massive now that exited, have so much money, they came from just an idea and a prototype, right? And I think what it allows people nowadays is accessibility towards technology and making something that they thought was impossible possible, right? And I think that's what just to flip it also, like obviously we're so pessimistic because we're like building and we see all of these things that are missing, but to be fair, I think it makes everybody a builder, you know.
And that's nice.
And that's amazing, man. Because
that's amazing, right?
It gives us a peek into, I don't know, man, it's like Lego, you know, like I think Lego was is an amazing toy for a lot of kids because it allows them to build based on their imagination. And nowadays, it's like adults, you know, giving adults the capacity to building whatever they have in their imagination and making that real. As a product person who's, to be honest, I'm not very good at coding. I know the framework, architecture, blah, 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 but I can't code for my life, you know. But because of vibe coding, it allows me now to translate my deepest thoughts or my deepest ideas into something that's real that can benefit other people.
Get a validation early and start thinking about, then hire a developer engineer. Actually, I'm trying to push the limits and try to make really sophisticated apps till the end and ship them. We will see how it goes.
Yeah.
And
I think and we should end also pretty soon, but I think that's how we go with our next episodes is we should do vibe coding and share with everyone how we do it just to make it more real. And then we can share some tips when we actually do it and then see how, you know, where we get with those products.
I have one question for before we finish that hasn't have to be like answered. But what I was thinking about is, are apps or websites built using vibe coding tools a USP or not? Because what I've seen on the market is that there are people saying, I will make an app for you using AI. It will be fast. Like they are using it like it was a USP, like it was a good proposition for it. For me, when someone would tell me, I will build your app using Lovable, for me, I wouldn't trust it because as I know it, I know what are the problems and I don't trust even myself working with it, that it will really work when I add feature B and feature A won't break. So is it a USP or is it a sign of something of a lower quality? And how people would approach it in the future, if they would favor, or now if they favor the apps that are built by human or the apps that are built by the AI.
Well, that's a good question, man. But honestly, like before I had like negative thoughts about AI built things because I feel like it's inferior. But it actually having experience with actual engineers building for a lot of different people, I vibe code AI. I vibe code with AI first, man, and then I pass it on to engineers after. And the engineers do a shitty. Sorry, some of the engineers that I've worked with have not done a good job in translating my idea, my my idea or my vision into reality.
Yeah.
But vibe coding and working with vibe coded tools did. And they sometimes mess up the code and my requirements and thinking about UI. But when I vibe code something, UI is very good, you know. And if I feel that mobile is not good enough, I tell the AI to do mobile quickly while the engineers take about a month to finish it.
Yeah.
Right?
That
So
is
I
true.
think you have to think about the trade-offs. But I think nowadays the taboo is not there anymore because it's surpassing even some engineers and their skill set, man.
I mean, for the end users, like you are the customer that is not a builder on wipe coding, and someone offers you a website that's built or an app that's built by AI. So this is what I'm
But I
trying
think
to.
how that person should present themselves is that
Yeah.
they just won't tell the person that, hey, it's fully vibe coded. Like,
Actually,
because you're
this
bringing-
this is the trend I see.
yeah,
That the
because I
people
feel
are
like it's
actually
bringing stigma.
that the people. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah,
I would trust it less if someone offers me, I will make you something built on AI.
yeah.
If they tell me I have experience as an engineer, designer, and product manager in the past, okay,
Yeah, so that's why it should start from there.
I would
It's
trust
your-
them. But
it-
right
it
now,
starts-
the builder can
No,
be
no, no.
anyone.
No.
Yeah.
So it should start with your credentials first, that you've done this before, you know
Yeah.
the frameworks, you know the strategy, you know the architecture, so that what you're building is for the longer term scale.
Yep.
So example, in my case, when I work with different founders, they want to start really quick. So I do the work first and vibe code it and work with all of these requirements. And then later on, hand it off to an engineering team to finish and complete, right? But it depends also on the appetite and the amount that the founders have and they want to spend. But if somebody just tells me out of Upwork that I can vibe code for you without any background on coding or how to build product, I'd be highly doubtful about that. So I think it's also the presentation and not to present vibe coding as taboo, but vibe coding as a means so that you're more successful with the outcome of your
Yep.
of the problem that you want to solve.
Yeah. So what it comes from it to me is that you shouldn't evaluate the AI that much really, but the person sitting behind the AI.
Yes.
Because if you give
Yes,
a
yes.
really experienced person, like a really experienced, I don't know, like a artist, shitty tools, they will probably paint a nice picture.
Yeah.
But if you give like an experienced person that never painted the picture, very expensive colors and everything, like very good tools, they probably not gonna paint a good picture. And I think this is a good analogy.
No,
That
it's
it is
probably
much more
my
important.
joke there would be it's probably abstract or contemporary
Yeah.
art.
Yeah. So this is a really good resolution for
Yeah.
this episode, that the vibe coding and the AI is extremely dependent on us humans,
Oh my god.
on the person
The-
that is
The
actually
weapon
using it. So
no, it's all about the weapon is as useful as the wielder of that weapon.
yep. Yeah. That's what I was.
Should we end there? Because I think
Yeah.
we have a long episode now. Lots of good stuff here. I think we have to splice it, you know.
Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna shoot
Slice it.
Splice and slice.
What's the splice?
Splice is like I actually forgot what splice is.
I'm
Yeah.
not also sure, but I know what we're gonna slice.
Oh yeah, the
This
bread.
one.
Yeah, that's true. Man, so much dad jokes in this episode. I think we should have a game that everybody takes a shot every time we have a dad joke.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you so much, Frank. Super enjoyed this episode. Amazing
me
view
too.
of Vienna. I'm not sure if we're gonna shoot an evening episode, so you can see Vienna in the evening. You know, we'll decide in a bit.
We'll see.
Thank you again for listening and tuning in. Don't forget to click on subscribe. You know, so definitely you can hear more from us if you like whatever we're saying. You can follow us also on different social media channels, so you can get our short form there. And yeah, we'll see you in the next city.
Yep.
Ciao.